tired of that same old thing. There ain't no shame, cause everybody ain't gonna change. Moxie's looking to stop, they shine beyond. His cover's blown, can't fool us for too long. We need a real world champ, no more cheap shots. Consider Mox the right doctor for the detox. You know when ANC's on the track, the beat pops.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of the All Elite podcast. As always, I'm your host, All Elite Andy, and I'm joined by my boy, my co-host always, Big Match AJ. AJ, we are all affected by the coronavirus. This will probably be the coronavirus-themed podcast, but outside of that, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. My school got canceled because of the aforementioned coronavirus, which sucks because I've been studying really hard. And on top of that, I've just been sitting in my room watching WCW Nitro and doing other things to keep busy.
Yeah, man, I've really been getting a lot of like nitpicky cleaning things done, even on my computer, and taking care of like old files and stuff, just because it's something I would do if I had literally free time to just throw away, which I happen to have now. So yes, very much a different type of world that we're living in, where everything seems to be changed or affected in one way or another by this virus. And whether you take it very seriously or not, it seems to have impacted your life in one way or another. That very much seen with what is going on within the professional wrestling world. We even have issues of shows being canceled, a lot of independent shows being forced to be canceled, and the major shows being forced to run without any fans whatsoever. So it's just a very different time for wrestling fans, wouldn't you say?
It's surreal, is what it is. It's completely like a weird dream. And I mean, obviously, it's not just wrestling. Like almost anything doesn't have crowds or arenas now, and obviously, all the sports too are basically put on hold until further notice. And so, but it affects indie wrestling so much. I think is the biggest thing, just overall, because these are not guys who can make a lot of money in a company who are going to get paid even if they don't have shows. Well, that's a huge hit. And I think with WrestleMania moving, it's going to hurt the indies really bad. It's a bad time to be in for wrestling.
Yeah, it's been so strange as a wrestling fan, and it's so hard because you want to be able to support the talent that are struggling at this time, but at the same time, there's so many different avenues that you'd also like to support. I mean, if you're looking in terms of some of the small businesses in your area might be suffering because they have to close, like restaurants and stuff it's unprecedented things that you would never have expected. And yeah, you want to be able to help independent wrestling, but you also want to be able to stay within your community too. So there's just so much that it's really tough. That and of course I'm going to do my part, especially within GCW. That's a company I really enjoy. I'll probably do whatever I can to help support those types of companies that I'm really fond of, because it is a hard time right now to be a wrestler or a wrestling fan. I don't know if you tuned into SmackDown this Friday night, but I tuned in just to get a taste of what we're probably going to be looking at going forward. And man, it's weird.
It's super weird. It's surreal is the word, man. I mean, it's every show is an empty arena match. It's bizarre, and I can't even think of there's nothing to compare this to. This is unprecedented. It's weird. It's all the problems with this pandemic, and it's kind of insane how much this is affecting wrestling. It's also kind of insane how wrestling is continuing on. They're not just stopping. They could easily do that, and they could easily put everything on hold until further notice. Like, well, WWE might not be. I don't know. I don't know how much they would actually lose with that, and AEW would obviously lose a lot, but they're still losing a lot though, even without the crowds. This is affecting the big leagues too. This is affecting AEW. I think the least affected by this is probably WWE, considering they have the most money and they can probably handle this the best. But for something like AEW, killing off your crowds and those ticket sales for the foreseeable future, that hurts.
It hurts too because it's so early on in the stages of the company. I mean, we joked around about it on the last episode. Phil is super heavily affected by this. He's someone who had purchased tickets and was super ready to go to the Rochester show. And then next thing you know, Thursday morning, he's sitting there saying,
"Fucking kidding me?"
Because his tickets that he bought are totally gone. They're not worth anything now until July. I mean, I'm not sure if he's planning on getting a refund or what his idea is. But I use Phil as a very good reference point because we both know that Phil can be a little bit jaded sometimes, or a little bit easily turned off of a product, and this is something I could see Phil and a lot of other people, and with respect, like I don't blame them too much of being like, man, this. And it's not AEW's fault, but it does suck. And it's like, damn, I was so excited. This card was looking so good, and now you're kind of left in the rain in a really shitty spot anyway. And again, it's not AEW's fault, but it's tough for AEW to have to bounce back from that.
It's super hard because, like we talked about not a few weeks ago, how many new fans go to AEW shows and how many people who are there with their friends who are wrestling fans. It definitely hurts because you have a lot of gaining interest through these shows, and it's going to be really hard. And I'm curious what to see. One thing we can do is probably throw out the ratings for the foreseeable future because God, it's going to be weird, or maybe it'll be more important than ever since there's not a lot of competition going on. But it's everything's kind of turned upside down, hasn't it?
It's just weird and it's hard, and it like I don't know what you do. Do you get thousands of fans to Skype in and set the what do you do to get that audible response? And in an arena,
You
like
just
you
have
you
to.
you don't pipe in noise, like, because you watching that SmackDown, it wasn't something that you could see being a consistent product people would really want to tune
Yeah,
into, because there's just not enough there. And if you're going to do that, you need to then like somehow bring in your best commentators to help tell whatever story you're trying to tell, because it's already tough as it is. So, and these things are, and it's tough in professional wrestling, a sport where they're trying to call spots in the middle of a ring and you have to be quiet. And AEW is a company that revolves so much around crowd reaction and crowd response and interaction with that crowd. Look at Orange Cassidy. This is someone who could never have gotten to the height of popularity that he's at without the crowd.
yeah, and I mean you're dead on with that. It's going to be such a big impact. You're going to have to really focus on making the wrestling being able to be good enough to stand on its own 2 feet, which a lot of these people, wrestlers, they can't do. I mean, honestly, they're not like these. Not everybody's Kenny Omega, and it's eerie and it's a hard thing to work to no crowd at all, and it's not something anybody has really had experience with. It's not the territory days where you were working and looking at cameras all the time and focusing on the TV audience. You're focusing on fans for most of your career, and that's how you get trained to be as a wrestler. It's going to be incredibly impossible. And not only that, I don't know. The only empty arena match I ever saw was Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk, and even that was weird to watch with no crowd and no anything, no noise. It's just bizarre and it's hard and it's nearly impossible to do where people could be excited about it.
Yeah, and it's tough because at some point, even there could be a point where they just aren't able to put these shows on because of whatever laws or restrictions are put into place today.
Yeah,
They're talking about they don't want more than 10 people in one spot at one time. We're looking at the blood and guts match still happening based upon what they're advertising, and that is a 10-person match. Um, Professional wrestling is not excluded from things like this. Yes, it is just a recommendation. It's not a law that's put into place, but these things have been changing every day, where you easily could see a situation where they don't want the law is there is no gathering of more than 10 people. You
yeah,
can't feasibly do these events without at least 20 people, because you have to have cameramen, you have to have producers, you have to do so much that they're all in that venue together, and it's tough, and eventually they might be stuck in a position where you can't do anything, and then you're losing out on money with your TV contracts because you're not able to put out the show. So like TNT obviously will understand, but still you're not going to get paid for that week most likely. And these are just things that you suffer from. You suffer from crowds who are used to tuning in. Like you talked about new people tuning in. The person I went to the Dynamite show with, my mom's boyfriend, Aaron, he had a great time. He was tuned into Dynamite last week, like, and he'd never watched before. So you're growing this new fan base week by week, who now, who knows what's going to happen,
yeah.
and that's a tough thing, and that's difficult with this whole coronavirus thing. Like, hopefully they can maintain, and it really comes down. Wednesday's going to be which side can do it better, because the fact you
Very
have an
true.
alternative that could potentially be doing something drastically different that you're like, wow, this is exactly what I needed to make this still an engaging product somehow. Um, Again, I just don't know what that is. I don't know what more you can do.
I don't either. Aside from cranking in audio without turning up the hair dryers, and even that's going to be weird seeing no fans there. So you don't want to do that. And it's just, I don't know how. Like even Matt Jackson was like, "This is so serious," and he went from thinking it was nothing to it being the biggest deal. And that's kind of happened. It kind of feels like this blew up to like just destroy everything overnight. And even though it definitely did, and it was definitely building to this, but it just feels so bizarre that everything is happening like this right now. And I really don't know what you could possibly do to help your show out to make it seem like more palatable to not only new viewers, but viewers who have tuned in every week.
I really don't know. In a lot of ways, I almost wonder if it becomes taking away the wrestling product and transitioning to a much more product of an engaged conversation, maybe much more like streaming a video game, like taking what is popular and being able to be done with 4 or 5 people and putting
Yeah.
that on TNT in place of what you have, knowing that fans will tune into it. But you have to bring some, like, because genuinely at some point, if things are shut down, you should have an alternative idea in place. It shouldn't just be, well, we can't do anything. So hopefully there's something, and it is tough because, again, what do you do to make it more palatable? What do you do to make it more engaging for fans? And I genuinely feel like something to do with video games might be the only way to make it work. And that sounds crazy right now because they're still trying to work with alternatives. But just today, the UFC made the announcement that they're no longer going to run their next 3 events because of this.
Yeah.
And they were gung ho on running everything that they could the same way wrestling was going to, with little to no fan interaction and just your cameraman, etc. And they made that decision after the president's announcement today. So,
Mhm.
and then you see WrestleMania making that decision today. You have to wonder what they're going to do because you're running into a situation where you're running out of time. And I genuinely wonder if it's doing, even if it's not like you're not streaming video games, maybe you're doing a Joe Rogan type interview conversation with every wrestler you plan on using on your next pay-per-view event or something, because I cannot fathom what can be done here.
Yeah, no, me neither. And hey, if you can make enough content to make it a hour-long road to or 2-hour-long road to, great, but I don't think they can. I think that well's gonna run dry.
If
So,
they, at this point, it's almost like they should have been taping for this whole last weekend and just getting as much in
yeah.
the can as they could. The one benefit they would have is you shouldn't have any spoilers because there's no fans. So you can everything and just like, because and if they didn't do it then, they should be kind of thinking about doing it now within the
Yeah.
next couple of days. Because if you want content and you're very concerned about losing something in the next couple of weeks, because they've already rescheduled every show for the next month anyway. So just
Mhm.
tape them all. I mean, it sounds crazy, but I mean,
No, I'm with
what the
you.
hell else should you do? I think even every, like, WWE should be doing the exact same thing in theory, where they're just it's at the performance center. You don't have to worry about spoilers. Find something that's moderately a way to make it entertaining. And again, I don't know what it is. If you can have like virtual fans or something like.
Well, they do that CGI stuff on the stage. Maybe they can CGI in some fans. I
I
don't think
feel
they
like,
can, but
oh, dude, I feel like they can, man. I feel like
Kevin
WWE
Dunn.
can. WWE can. I don't know if AEW has that type of like graphic technology yet, but now that you mention all those little CGI like stage setups that are obviously not there, but CGI didn't. Oh man, that would be crazy. But no, I think at this point, it would be in their best interest to tape as much as you can in the next couple days and then go from there. And that
Yeah.
sounds weird, especially for AEW. They have a blood and guts match still lined up, and then
Yeah.
hopefully the next pay per view is not affected by this. There's just so much, especially tied into AEW being a new company, that is affected. And
That's the
the thing,
toughest part.
the one positive I get out of all of this, and it's gonna sound a little strange, I guess, is thank goodness AEW even exists, because look at all of these talent that are under a contract that aren't
That's very
worrying
true.
the way that, and it is unfortunate that the independent scene is going to suffer very hard and could take a big hit, and we could see some really lower companies especially not able to bounce back from this. This WrestleMania weekend thing is going to kill a
Yeah.
couple of companies, and that sucks. That's unfortunate, but it's what's going to happen. It's the
Yeah.
reality of the situation. So thank God for AEW that it exists, because look at imagine if it didn't. Imagine if the Bucks and Kenny and everyone signed with WWE at the beginning of last year, and we didn't have this AEW thing ever, then we would have no alternative after this. After this weekend, it would
Not at
be
all.
Game Changer would be in desperation mode. WrestleCon is in desperation mode. Like, there's so many companies affected by this that we would have so much just being like, damn, it's all WWE now. So the fact that AEW was able to get that foothold in up until this point, it's able to, one, feed so many different families, and two, we have a viable wrestling product after this is over. It's not
Yeah.
just going to be WWE business as usual. There's still the alternative. And if this happened 2 years ago, that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, especially considering this is going to get worse before it gets better. This is not the worst of it yet. So, like you said, if not this coming WrestleMania weekend, indies will be dying off because there's just no way to if you can't run shows, you can't make money. That's the bottom line.
Well, and a
And
lot
there's
of guys or a lot of companies spent a lot of money on venues and things like that, and your insurance and stuff like that only covers if the government officially shuts down these events, which is
yeah,
why you see a lot more recommendations than them officially doing these things, because it's a way for the government to then not have to pay out as much insurance money to a lot of these. And it's not specific to independent wrestling, it's very much across the board of like smaller companies and smaller businesses in
yeah,
general that are going to be affected by this wording that ends up costing a lot of people a lot of money. And it turns out the independent wrestling owners and companies are being affected by this in a big way,
yeah.
and thus the wrestlers are then affected because all of these shows have to be canceled or rescheduled. And so Mania weekend is going to take a toll on a lot of different promoters. That was something that was going around on social media. And in a lot of ways, I feel bad. In a lot of ways, you also have to just be like, there's nothing that can really be done. It's
Hmm.
what has happened. So it's unfortunate. One funny thing that came out of this, I know you saw it, the Hangman Page press release.
Yeah,
This was great. He just joked. It's so in character too. Hangman essentially saying he's not going to accept beers from fans at AEW events. Um, which evidently he made this before they said there would be no fans, because he said beers would just randomly pop up for him. So that's going to be fun. He also said he's going to just start drinking whiskey because the higher
yeah,
alcohol content is going to save him from the infection. So just a lot of tongue-in-cheek, like jokey things here that also relate to Hangman's character that I'm definitely not doing it any justice. If you haven't seen it, you have to read it, because it's the funniest thing that's come out of this.
it's great.
And it really, when I read it, I was like, if you're not a fan of Hangman, you probably would be, especially if you're a wrestling fan, just from reading this, because you're like, man, this gimmick is too good, and you just fed into it perfectly. And that's
Yeah,
what
he
you hope.
says to
You
buy a
hope,
pack of Corona.
yeah. He says buy a pack of Corona because they had nothing to do with this silly virus and all of this stuff. It's so funny, and he probably got himself a Corona freaking sponsorship off of that. But just like the smart aspect of utilizing something so shitty and not necessarily poking super fun at it, but poking fun at it to make it in a way that it works. And so hopefully they can turn all of this into some type of net positive in some way. Um, but it's tough.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And Hangman is, like you said, just great, and this is brilliant, and I loved it up and down. And definitely go read it if you haven't, because it's a gem right now on Twitter. And it's just it's this is all crazy. I think the thing I'm or not concerned about, confused about most, or left in wonder about most is what's going to happen to Blood and Guts? Are they just going to postpone that? Or are they going to do it with no crowd? Are they going to do like they have to do something, right? I mean, they don't have to do the match, I guess, if they don't have a crowd and don't want to do it like that. But you would think that they got to do something.
Yeah, and they could. I mean, though, I would almost assume that going into this week they would be planning on announcing it's just not happening due to the virus.
Yeah.
But because of the fact that they're still saying the 6-man tag is going to happen and it's for the advantage in the match, and they pushed it so heavily on Road 2, which they still released today after this huge announcement, you had to just come up with the idea that this is still going to happen, which it might come off. It's going to come off weird as hell in this cage. I don't even know what I would do at this point. At this point, I would have Matt show up and make it not be there, make it be at his house. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I would love that.
Like, you somehow get the Dark Order involved in this match, and it's just the whole episode of Dynamite is this match.
The Hardy compound.
It's the Hardy compound, and you have, granted there will be 15 people there, but they're outside, so it's safe. And you just do the Dark Order versus the Elite versus the Inner Circle at the Hardy compound with 2 cages, War Games style, but you're outside, so it's safe.
I would be so happy.
And it would it takes up a whole episode of Dynamite. It's the perfect length. I'm just saying, man, if
I would be overwhelmingly overjoyed.
We're running into a situation where Blood and Guts is definitely in danger, and there's only so much you can do with it. If you bring in Hardy in, you got to utilize the Hardy compound right now, because again, it's an outdoor venue, and that's what they're encouraging, is if you're gonna do shit, do it outside. So, I mean, it sounds crazy and off the wall, but I mean, at that point, anything involved with the Hardy compound is supposed to be crazy and off the wall.
Also, we're in a crazy and off the wall time.
Yeah, so whatever they do, it's got to be something, because they keep referencing Blood and Guts so much. I had expected, and I wouldn't have critiqued it in any way that we may have critiqued. Like, if canceling matches, we have a problem with. But canceling this match in this environment and this situation, totally understandable. Wouldn't be an issue. It would be like, damn, I get it, but let's just keep pushing, and can't wait to see it in the proper environment, because at the end of the day, you're really sacrificing people thinking this match type sucks because it's done in a horrible, horrible environment. So
yeah.
Dude, at this point, I'm just sold on the idea of them somehow involving Matt Hardy in this, and it being at the Hardy compound.
In the Hardy compound. Fuck yeah, dude. I want to see that.
So, and something else we found out on Road 2 is it looks like Nick Jackson is being pulled out of this event entirely, or this matchup entirely, which, I mean, perfect timing for him to be storyline written out of everything and sent home and not have to worry about showing up, because I mean, shit, with everything that's going on, a guy who needs to be there for his wife and his newborn child, it makes way more sense for him to be at home. So good timing on that, but everything else is a clusterfuck. Yeah. And hey, that's where you bring Matt Hardy in, and he's just like, I have the perfect idea of where to do this.
I would love that. I just, goddamn, it's so hard right now. And Nick Jackson is out, so that's the other reason you probably don't want to move the match, because if you move the match to say, hey, we're doing it in a month, then Nick Jackson has to be in that match. If you want to write him out for some storyline purpose, then that's kind of important. And I don't know that that's the case, but it would make sense. Like, if you're going to have him be out and do something with it. But goddamn, it's just insane right now. I don't know how to even process a lot of this, even though I've been thinking about it.
And it's so crazy at how much it affects. Like, today, we get an announcement that the Boston show has now been moved. That puts us out to April 15th. That's 5 shows in a row of AEW shows being moved to a smaller venue and just a smaller setup in general. This then puts us about a month out from the next pay-per-view, which every show or event at the MGM Grand has been canceled for 8 weeks due to a CDC suggestion. So that literally falls just before the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. So talk about cutting it close, man. Like, you're in a dangerous position there. And the ideal situation is things get better by then. Everything is good. That's almost like a rah-rah, like, perfect time to build people's spirits. Finally, we have fans back. We have this back. So in theory, it's great, but you're gambling on a lot. The same way that almost WWE gambled on WrestleMania until the last minute they possibly could, and here they are. So it's really tough. And my last suggestion the last thing I would ever suggest for them to do would be to just close everything up and wait. But man, dude, I mean,
It's tough.
it's to a point where you wish they had the forethought at the time to tape like 2 weeks worth of Dynamite when they were in Denver, 2 weeks worth, like, and it's again, it sounds like super crazy now, but we were coming out of last week's episode saying, like, hey, man, Phil, your show might get canceled. And it was a lot of we were joking a lot, and it was a lot just to hear Phil say,
Fucking kidding me?
but at the end of the day, it was the truth. Like, it ended up happening. So that thought couldn't have just been in our minds. And with that being known, and hell, even the fact that they're using dark matches that they have for dark right now, I would be like, nope, we're just gonna can them and use them on Dynamite this week. And because it's tough, man. So
I would do that, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. But
and they're running dark as regular, and I get it, because I mean, what are you really gonna do with these dark matches anyway? But they're actually decent dark matches. You have Daniels versus Grayson. Like, there's stuff you can do with the content they filmed last week. It's just unfortunate they couldn't get more done in time.
I totally agree. It's such, I just keep saying it again, but it's such a bizarre situation, and it's like, what do you possibly do here? And like you said, they should really, I agree with you, they really should start taping shows and just having them in the bank, because this could by all means get worse for a long time.
At this point, we've gotten to like the last leg of potential ideas. Like, after that idea, it's when you literally have to get down to like, okay, let's do a talk show or a studio show, or because right now,
or Kenny Omega stream video games or do whatever.
Because up until this point, you had time last week. Like, it's not to be like shit on them or anything, but it's like, that's where you had time to do that. This is where you have time to do this, and you either need to do it now, or then you wait until next week and hope you can do another show, when by all means we could be under like a national quarantine the way other countries are, where you can't leave your house. At that point, you probably can't put this show together. So, like, again, it's something I'm just now thinking of. So it's not like I'm blaming them for being like, why didn't you guys tape over the weekend, or why didn't you tape already? Or hell, maybe they did. Maybe they got everybody together at Daly's place and taped everything and didn't tell anybody. I mean, because at this point, that's what they should have done, because you're running out of time to do whatever you want to do.
Like, because you got to think, like, they did, like you said, they did not think down the line to begin with. Now's the time to think down the line. And the option here is, if this gets worse, we are fucked, and we have nothing to air except for like a talk show. So start taping. You have an arena, you own an arena, great. Start shooting it, because you really are running out of time. Because like most people are saying, this is going to get worse before it gets better. And so like you said, if we're on a national quarantine, that's it, dude. There is no, I'm not saying that's it for the company, but that is going to hurt.
There's no way to run shows. There's no way to run those shows. Like, you can't put on content for those weeks. So yes, again, TNT won't be upset. The advertisers won't hold it against you, but you cannot get funding back for that. You can't get paid for providing that content, which is a big hit when that's their main source of income and revenue. So you have to have an idea in place now to work on that, and to ensure that you won't run into that issue, because like I said, we waited until this week, and now that we're 2 days out from the show, 2 days out from their plan of running Dynamite, we're getting an announcement from the president saying, don't do events with more than 10 people. You just can't feasibly do a wrestling event if the law then becomes, don't do it with 10 people. And even beyond that, like, as great as it is, or as entertaining as it is for the fans that professional wrestling is still trying to make this happen, God forbid someone like Roman Reigns, who has had cancer in the past, or Jim Ross, who's an older commentator, God forbid one of these people gets sick and pass away to coronavirus, because the company, and again, the company's not forcing them to do it, but the company didn't take the measures to say, we're just not going to give you the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
So now is the time to, across the board in major professional wrestling, to tape what you can tape. Use the whole week to tape it because you canceled all house shows. You canceled all this. You canceled all that. You'll have all the talent in Jacksonville for the Florida show, for Dynamite. Like, tape your shit. Just get everyone in, tape it, and that's what you have to air. And
Yep.
you really shouldn't have to worry about spoilers because you have 10
No
people,
crowd.
20 people in
You
the
have to be
venue.
inside.
So, and it sounds crazy, and it will probably come. I mean, it gives you 4 weeks to put in some audio somehow, man. I don't know.
And hey, you don't have to run the shows if you can do them live too if you really want. It just have something. Like,
Yeah.
God forbid, have something.
And it probably sounds like a crazy theory right now, but if in 2 weeks when we really have to do a podcast for 30 minutes talking about old episodes of Dynamite or old shows because there's nothing to talk about, we'll probably be a little bit complainy that they didn't do something like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not again, and it's a matter of the situation. The situation sucks in general, but they should start planning now, and they obviously have, based upon the fact that they are canceled out until April 15th. But get as much as you can in. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy all of the effects that it's had, both on just again the MGM Grand being closed until how long. We have no idea what's going to happen with Blood and Guts. It's an effect from top to bottom, and then if someone like we said, someone gets sick or anything like that, it then it erupts tenfold. So. But they did at least announce one more match for this week's Dynamite. We have Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy teaming up. We'll at least get off of the coronavirus topic to talk about Dynamite for a couple minutes. So this match, Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy taking on the Butcher and the Blade. This is another interesting one because, again, Jungle Boy, being a more green talent, being in this situation is going to be difficult.
Yeah. I mean, it's good for Jungle Boy in the aspect that they can get an easy win here. You don't have to. I mean, it sucks for the Butcher and the Blade, but the Butcher and the Blade aren't in any kind of program. There's no reason why they can't take a loss here. And so you want to give Jungle Boy those wins. You want to give Luchasaurus those wins. This is the perfect way to do it. And the thing with me, honestly, I'm not worried about Jungle Boy. I'm worried about Luchasaurus because it seems like his leg is still bothering him every time he does anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I've noticed it in some cases, but in other cases, recently especially, he's looked a lot better and a lot more smooth in what he does. But you're right. In this situation where there's essentially all focus on everything that's going on in the ring, he has to be at essentially 100% because
Yeah.
if an injury or whatever does affect him a little bit, it will become more evident. Everything is going to become more evident. Every small aspect of each match will become more evident to us as we watch them because there's not a whole lot else going on. And the difference between what we're getting on Dynamite this week and what we got on SmackDown. SmackDown was a lot of highlights and replay from Elimination Chamber. They have essentially a full card listed for Dynamite. So we're going to get probably and it's probably a lot of longer matches because it's not a super
You would assume, yeah.
it's not a full card. It's like 3 or 4 matches, but still we're going to get the reveal of the Dark Order on Dynamite. Again, this is a moment where if it's Hardy, I'm doing this at the Hardy compound instead. I'm taping it over the weekend. I'm not doing this in the arena of nothing. It becomes a 30-minute video package, literally.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If you're gonna have it be Hardy, then definitely do it at the Hardy compound. No reason not to.
With a match in that because it starts out with Matt at the compound being revealed as leader of the Dark Order, and then making the Beaver Boys wrestle to stay in the Dark Order against Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, just because. Again, it just for some type of content, and again, you're utilizing them outside or out of the wrestling arena. You could tape it on at the Hardy compound, and it's different, and it's what you got. You got to try something. If they have Matt, they have such an advantage right now in being able to produce different content because it makes way more sense with his history. So, and again, that's me going way out in left field, but I hope someone there is doing the same type of thing because they have to do something out of left field for this to be enjoyable. If it's the same thing, again, no one's going to be mad at them for it, but you have an opportunity to really impress people here.
Yeah, you definitely do. And Matt Hardy is the ace in the hole in that regard. There's no other wrestler or anybody in wrestling like Matt Hardy who can do things without a crowd like he does. And it's honestly the perfect opportunity for him to shine. So if Matt Hardy is not supposed to be the exalted one, make him the exalted one because at this point it is your best option.
Yeah, well, you can have him take over, just become the leader of the Dark Order and take over AEW in general. Then you can do the whole show from his compound for weeks and just have it be people either fighting to be in the Dark Order or get away from the like. You have to change something now, and his little universe might be the most effective tool any company could use right now.
Absolutely.
And if they happen to have him, that would be my route because the reveal of the Dark Order's leader, the Exalted One, is going to be an important thing. We were watching Road 2 earlier, and I really felt what you felt in the fact that it's not going to be Matt, but that made me feel like it was really going to be Brody, especially with them being on their way to Rochester, which would be weird. And imagine Brody being revealed as the leader of the Exalted One by just him and the Dark Order beating someone down.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. And I'm not saying Brody wouldn't have been able to sell it if he was at a live crowd in Rochester. I think he might have been able to pull it off, but in front of nobody in Jacksonville, where a lot of people probably who are new viewers, like Bill's girlfriend, for instance, don't even know who he is. That's a tough sell. That's a really tough sell.
Yeah, so I mean, and I'm right there with you. It's a tough sell. It's tough to get people really into that. So I don't know, man. And just because there's no reaction either, so it's got to be like a legit murder. So this is a time to video package it up, man. And that's where Joey Janela could shine too. We got to get Joey
you're right about that. I didn't even think about that. This would be perfect for Joey Janela.
Yep. So I mean, that's where they could work best right now. Honestly, is just video package the episode. Like they do that sometimes to their detriment too much anyway. Where we see too many interviews and video packages. Where now is a really good time to be hopefully have been working all weekend on just throwing together some of that shit. They did throw together the rest of this card. They have the Lucha Brothers taking on the Best Friends. This will be a fun one.
Great match.
To see.
This is going to be good.
To see it, especially in this environment, because these four are all super talented and can. Not to say that the other four aren't, but these four can have a killer match in their sleep. They won't have to even communicate much anyway. So
this will, out of no question, this should deliver.
This will be the best match of the week on any wrestling product. I almost guarantee it. NXT has a great roster and could potentially do something of the same sort. But the Lucha Brothers, and I think the language barrier is almost the most helpful thing where they won't be able to talk to each other very well and communicate the next move or whatever. So, and again, these two teams are just so good. They have such a long history as a team, such a long history. Like Lucha Brothers have obviously been together forever. Best Friends have been together for so long. So this is such a great match where it should just flow so well, despite the fact that there's no one in the audience. And I mentioned earlier the lack of the audience for Orange Cassidy could hurt him. The fact that these four are so good and Pac is so good, this will definitely probably be the best thing on all of wrestling this week.
Yeah, the only thing I can think being a detriment is if you try to get that Orange Cassidy pop with no pop. That would hurt.
It would literally, you'd have to just feel it at home, you know what I mean? And sometimes you do with Orange's stuff where you're like, oh, and it's cool, but the crowd reinforces it and makes it emphasize with the other people that are in your room or whatever, so it's nice. They can still do it. It'll just it has to be spot on. It can't be one of those ones where it's wrong because you don't have the audience to help you.
Yeah, definitely. And you could also do something small, like just have him, if Pac interferes, have Orange Cassidy there and do something to stop him or vice versa. So you can do whatever you want there and probably avoid, a big hands in pocket spot. But like you said, this is going to be the match. I'm not saying the main event's going to be bad, but I don't think it'll be as good as a match that is able to exist by the wrestling. Like, this is a wrestling match. By that I mean, sorry, that sounds weird, but by that I mean this is a match that focuses on wrestling and on the in-ring action, and a match that you don't really need to have a lot of the storyline or ballyhoo or nonsense. You can just focus on the match and enjoy it and relax, and you don't really need to worry about anything else. Like you said, NXT could do that too, but I don't foresee them having something of this quality.
This is very much like an artistic wrestling match would be
Yeah.
a good way for us to put it, where they call wrestling an art all the time, and some people disagree with it. This would very much fit that mold of four guys who know how to tell a story, who know how to do all of these types of things without saying anything to each other while they're in the ring, while they're in front of the audience. So, yeah, I think this one's going to be great. But I have to agree, like, you were a little bit hesitant in disagreeing with you were a little bit hesitant in arguing that the main event might not be as good, because the main event's still going to be great too. I have to assume. Yeah. I mean, Jericho alone being in this environment where we'll be able to hear everything he's saying. He's someone I feel like maybe has never worked in an empty arena match, but easily could. It's not an empty arena match, but his work in Japan.
It's effectively the same thing.
Well, his work in Japan where he is working to a very silent crowd, but you can hear everything he's saying and doing.
Yeah.
It's going to work out really well in this situation because he's going to do great. You're going to hear everything he has to say. He's going to be shit-talking the whole time. It's just going to leave such room for botchamania moments where someone says something you're not supposed to hear. But again, it creates a good dynamic with Hangman too, obviously assuming he's on the other side.
Yeah, if there was ever a time to put Kenny and Hangman in, now is absolutely up and down, because you have Kenny Omega, you have Hangman Page, you have Chris Jericho, you put Matt Jackson or Cody Rhodes in there, you have a good match. You have people who can handle this, who can work in front of no audience and deliver. I don't know who it's going to be though. Who it's going to be with Chris Jericho? That's what worries me, because whoever is with Chris Jericho obviously doesn't have that same experience. And if it's Santana Ortiz. Yeah, if it's Santana Ortiz, like I was about to say, it could be good. But again, they're also a tag team that for their whole career has played to a crowd. Like, they've never worked in Japan like all these other guys would have.
Yeah, I think that one thing in general, working in Japan, not to because that quieter crowd, it's not the same obviously as working in front of no one, because you still get a reaction, but you're more used to working in that dynamic of utilizing your mouth a lot more almost in what you have to say in a wrestling match, and talking more, making more noise. Like, that is going to help a lot of the AEW guys who are familiar with doing that type of thing. It's funny, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or if it was when we were just off the show, but Phil was talking about Isaiah Cassidy and his scream.
Oh yeah.
This week might be a perfect time to be doing the scream, because it's something
You're right.
It's something else that people can hear audibly going on. And so that's where it's going to be helpful, in the fact of even looking at the Inner Circle. Sammy is someone who can do a lot with his mouth, like just talking shit outside of the ring. Yeah. Proud and Powerful also can do a lot in that aspect, just in what they do outside of the ring, being entertainers. Even Hager, when he will be outside of the ring, will do a lot, even with his facial expression. And then you get the Elite on the other side. These are all very good vocally and using their face and stuff. It's not stuff you think about a lot in wrestling, but when you don't have a crowd, these things are going to help tenfold. And I think that's what's going to set Dynamite apart. And that's where WWE's fortunate they have NXT up against Dynamite, because if it was Raw or SmackDown, I don't think it would stand a chance, just because of
I don't either.
At least in terms of delivering a better product. And I know that a lot of people right now are being like, the product, you gotta cut the product some slack. At the end of the day, people are still going to be tuned in, and there's a chance it's even more than usual. So because of that, you want to deliver as good of a product as you possibly can.
Definitely. And I think there's a chance that this is not a terrible show. I think it's a possibility that AEW can pull this off. I would not have that same faith in Raw or SmackDown. I think NXT could have a good show, like you said. And like you said, if they were up against Raw or SmackDown, hell, we might have a Monday Night War, because Raw's going to be terrible tonight, dude. Raw's going to stink.
Yeah, I'm interested in just what they could possibly do if it's still a 3-hour show, right? So you got to fill now 3 hours with that. Again, it's going to probably be a lot more highlights to Elimination Chamber and stuff like that. And that's where WWE has that to at least utilize. And if I'm AEW, I'm not totally afraid of using the last pay-per-views matches, or maybe even just all the pay-per-views matches, sort of starting at the first pay-per-view and being like, here's a full match, and then here's our card of like
Mhm.
2 or 3, like, because you're running into a situation where they've got to do something. So who knows? It's up to them to figure it out. I threw them out a couple ideas of if I'm gonna throw a clip up of one just to try and get them to recognize something, man, because it's tough right now, man. There's only so much they can do, but they gotta think outside of the box. You can't just hope. You can't just hope that we're gonna go out and do the wrestling match and it's going to be just fine. Like, and it will be just fine. Like, no one's gonna give you that much critique. But I guarantee you, there will be people shitting all over AEW if there's like 2 out of the 3 or 4 matches on the show. You very clearly hear spots being called. You very clearly get a much worse product because they didn't try to do something different. Or if 2 weeks they have nothing to give TNT because they didn't think ahead now.
Yeah, because like you said, I don't know, you got to think ahead because AEW has to think ahead. WWE doesn't. After WrestleMania, they can air documentaries if they want to. They have the biggest wrestling video library in the whole entire world. They can run enough content that is interesting, like documentaries and everything else, for a very, very long time, a good amount of time. And on top of that, they can tape shows and they can put on live shows if they want to. AEW doesn't have that
Well,
opportunity.
just imagine, honestly, AJ, like, and I highly doubt they would ever do this, but imagine if WWE just decided to start airing like mid Monday Night War episodes of Raw in place of what they have for Raw right now. They would probably do better ratings airing replays of Stone Cold Steve Austin right now than what they're doing regularly, just because you have fans from that era who have no other sports to watch, no other anything to watch, that just getting that nostalgia feeling of replays of old Raw would probably do better. So WWE has that to utilize if they so need to. AEW's most useful content is from less than a year ago. And even as a big fan of AEW, I'm not super going out of my way to see that right now, and because I've seen it already. The matches are great. It's great content. It's great whatever. But on Wednesday nights, if I have to choose between watching old episodes of Dynamite or like finding a movie to watch or something, I'm not super inclined to watch old episodes of Dynamite.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Just because it's so recent, like, and I'll just feel like I've seen this.
I
knew who was going to win before they aired the match because of how the match was set up, and now I definitely know who's going to win. So, it's again, I'm not trying to shit on AEW or say that they're super at fault for anything. I'm just saying that they should take this time to utilize something else. Think outside the box. Do something different, even if it's not one of my ideas, if it's some other idea. That they have so many creative dudes on this roster that you have to have some type of idea of something to do, and I'm sure it'll be good.
I agree. I feel like they have to have something up their sleeve going into all this. They have to be taking it seriously now because you can't take it lightly at this point. So, yeah, like with all these creative minds and everything you have going for you, and hopefully Matt Hardy, fingers crossed, as it looks like, then yeah, I feel like you definitely have potential to put on something good. And we don't want to come off like we're shitting on AEW because we're not shitting on anybody. This is just the reality of the situation.
And I totally understand that they're dealing with the cards they're dealt right now. I just hope that they are doing something to plan for the next couple weeks in the event that they can't put on some type of show, because you need something. Hopefully they realize that, or they think that, and maybe because that's kind of the idea of what Cody's been putting out, is that they should be there to provide content. So think ahead in case you're not able to provide the content you want to provide. But nonetheless, I don't blame AEW. I super understand, just like many companies throughout the whole U.S. and the world, really. Look at New Japan. Like, not just wrestling companies, too. There's so many places affected by this that I don't blame anyone. And it's really just unfortunate from top to bottom. I just am giving ideas that if they want to continue putting on a show weekly, that they could consider, because it looks like that might be what they have to do.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you.
But overall, I think that we've basically covered everything regarding the coronavirus and Dynamite. Hopefully our next episode is going to be dedicated to whatever craziness we get on Wednesday in terms of a product. So I'm really interested in what we're able to talk about then. But hopefully we don't have to spend the rest of these shows coming up with 30 minutes about coronavirus. They might end up being shorter episodes, but we're definitely not going to deep dive in the effect that coronavirus has had on professional wrestling every time we talk. But we definitely felt like this episode especially, we had to discuss it and discuss the effect it's especially having on AEW. Obviously, this being the All Elite podcast. But yeah, dude, it's had an effect from top to bottom. You even see it on Being the Elite and everything. Like, it's a shorter episode. Everything is shorter, much more condensed. They're only able to work with so much, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next.
Hell, Being the Elite might be something they end up having to use.
Yeah, it's that, and who knows? You just put together, maybe that's something they would do, is put together a bunch of, like, you'd have to clean it up a little bit, I'm sure, because I'm sure there's some that isn't necessarily, like, TV ready or TNT ready, but maybe just put on something like that and give it and put it out there. So, or maybe you just bring people in 2 at a time and tape singles matches, like, that's it. Because I have no idea, but I'm like, as a weirdo, I'm like excited to see what they possibly bring, because I love change and different things, but I know it's gonna just be weird in general. So
yeah, it's gonna be surreal, man.
But overall, I just hope the best for everyone in general, not just within wrestling, not just within our community, but in general. Like, hopefully this doesn't have a major impact on you. It's obviously impacting so many in many different ways. Look at Phil. He's over here saying,
"Fucking kidding me?"
because he's not able to go to the Dynamite show that he wants to go to. But I mean, seriously, it's having a legitimate impact on Phil.
Yeah.
Because his girlfriend's not able to go to work. He's having to work more. Like, there's just, it's crazy the effect that it has in 2 totally different ways just under one roof. And that doesn't even include places in other countries where people are literally losing their lives. So in general, just stay safe. Make sure you stay super sanitary. Take care of yourself if you're feeling sick, yada, yada, yada. You've heard about it all week long. You're going to continue hearing about it on the news. I basically just want to close the podcast out, hopefully promising we won't spend a whole extra episode about coronavirus, because I know a ton of people around me are already like, oh my God, we've heard about this all day on the news. So I'm sure coming into this episode, a lot of people are like, oh my God, we've heard about this all day. We had to talk about it this episode. It'll be referenced a little bit on the next episode, but it's not going to be a huge topic unless it has to be. So
yeah,
that really covers everything for us this week. Phil, you have anything else to add?
"Fucking kidding me?"
Oh, I thought you were talking to me.
Nah, man, AJ, it's your turn. What do you got to add?
I got nothing to add, man. I got my Instagram and Twitter.
Oh,
You
ahead.
can follow me on Twitter at Big Match AJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJ the Fitzy.
And as always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. We're on Instagram at All Elite Everything. And we're on Facebook at facebook.com/All Elite Pod. You can catch me on Twitter whenever at All Elite Andy. And until next time,
"Fucking kidding me?"